The cab rolled to a stop outside the Meridian at 5:45 p.m., the limestone facade glowing in the late sun. Cora tugged the last invisible thread on her cream dress, and I smoothed the navy silk tie she gave me on our 40th. Inside, the lobby hummed, laughter ricocheted off marble, a clink of glass from the bar, that anticipatory buzz before the ceremony. We walked toward the ballroom, 50 feet ahead, where two brass easels flanked the entrance like sentries. That's where I saw them. Studio-lit portraits, ours, printed large and framed. On the left, the photo from our holiday card 2 years ago, me, smiling, oblivious. On the right, Cora from the same shot. Beneath each, block letters so stark they punched the air from my lungs. Do not admit these two. My hand paused on the door handle and never made contact. The brass might as well have been ice. A young security hire hovered near the easels, shifting from foot to foot, mortified. He tried to speak. "Sir? Ma'am? I'm supposed to—" "You're doing your job," I said. Cora found my hand and squeezed once. 43 years married, I knew that squeeze. Hold your head high. She lifted her chin like she used to backstage before a final runway, and we turned around together. No drama, no scene. We walked back through the lobby with the kind of dignity you rehearse your whole life for and only hope you'll remember when it counts. Someone whispered. Someone else said, "Aren't those the groom's parents?" The doorman called a cab without us asking. The driver checked the rear view as we slid in. The Meridian. Fancy night. Was supposed to be, I said. Traffic was light, radio low. A pop song swore love was forever. The irony stung. I pulled out my phone. Keenan had texted at 5:30. "On our way to the venue. Can't wait to see you both." My hands started to shake. Then, all at once, they didn't. The old mask slid on, the one I wore for premieres and fundraising galas when everything was on fire and someone still needed to make the show run on time. They forgot who I am, I thought. I've spent 40 years making other people's nights unforgettable. Quick pause. If you're listening, hit subscribe and tell us where you're tuning in from. This one's a ride. I stared at my contacts and picked a name I hadn't called in a year, because if they wanted a night to remember, I knew how to deliver one.
Our brick building on N.W. Gleason looked the way it always had. Quiet, civilized, normal. The opposite of me. "Give me 2 hours," I asked Cora on the sidewalk, "before you try to talk me out of anything." "I'm not going to talk you out of it," she said, disappearing inside. That surprised me more than the portraits. My office was the second bedroom we'd converted years ago. On the desk sat my old leather Rolodex, the analog weapon no spreadsheet could replace. I spun it, pulled a legal pad closer, and started a list. Carl, AV. Paula, florals. Naya, photography. Jerry, staffing. Marco, DJ. Names of people I'd hired, mentored, vouched for. People who remembered when I vouched for them before they had websites. Cora stood in the doorway, barefoot now. "You're really doing this," I said. "You saw those frames." "She's still his wife," Cora said softly. "He's still our son. And he signed off on that lobby stunt." I called Carl first. He picked up on the third ring. "Fletcher, been a minute." "I go back to the Williamson Gala, 2001, I said, letting the past speak for me. Silence. Then, "What do you need?" "Nothing illegal, but if your soundboard felt temperamental and cues got slow tonight, I wouldn't blame the equipment." A long exhale. "Marco owes me. I'll tell him the rig acts up when it smells champagne." "Thank you." Next, Naya, the photographer I once talked off a ledge after her first wedding. I said, "Memory card hiccups happen, especially during family formals." "That's rough," she whispered. "But okay, selectively rough." Then I texted Paula, who's done half of Portland's centerpieces for 2 decades. I typed, "Severe lily allergy on bride's side, heads up." She answered in seconds. "They insisted on lilies. I warned them." I replied, "Make sure they're generous, prominent." Our daughter Faye called from London. "Dad, what's happening? Keenan's not answering." "They put our faces on frames and barred us," Cora said, voice steady until it cracked. Faye inhaled sharply. I can drop a social nuke if you want. Hold, I said. No one gets hurt tonight. Technical gremlins only. My phone buzzed. Carl. Ceremony music glitchy. Another from Naya. Family photos corrupted. Paula. Lilies are in. 3 S's, 40 years of treating people like humans. Cora studied me. You're not touching the food. Absolutely not. No casualties. Just inconvenience. My screen lit. Keenan calling. I watched it ring out. Not yet, I told Cora. I needed somewhere public to sit with what I'd started, so we walked to a bar, and the first real consequences arrived before the drinks did.
Reed's Grill had dark wood and low lamps, the kind of place where a person could disappear into the grain of the bar. We slid onto stools, formal wear and all. The bartender raised an eyebrow. Celebrating? A wedding, I said. Congratulations, he offered, confused when I didn't smile. The phone was a live wire on the mahogany, pulsing updates like a heart monitor. Carl, processional track slowed to a crawl, felt like a dirge. Naya, family formals, half corrupted, offering a reshoot. Paula, centerpieces everywhere, allergy mom just walked in. Cora watched me watch it happen. This is our son's wedding, she said. He placed our faces on a no-fly list. I'm offering a weather delay. Another buzz. Backup DJ en route, Carl wrote. Coordinator is fast. I knew the name from a planning spreadsheet we'd been shared on and then unshared from months ago. Madison Cross. Smart, efficient, relentless. She's good, Cora said. You're underestimating her. Can't fix everything, I said, unconvinced by my own voice. A text from Paula froze my hand halfway to my glass. Allergy mom sneezing nonstop, eye swelling, coordinator moving, guests filming, bride's mother furious. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. No, that's not what this is. Technical snags, not harm, not this. Look at me, Cora said, wide-eyed. There's a line. Lilies were their choice, I said, but it sounded thin. Phones in the room lit up. Reed suddenly felt too small, too lit, too interested in us. Another message from Carl. System flatlined during first dance announcement. Total dead air. Coordinator hunting Plan C. You're checking boxes like you're running a gala, Cora said. It's how my brain works, I said. It's not a gala. It's Keenan. I didn't have a retort. The bartender topped my old-fashioned. I didn't remember asking. Sound return, updates, fog of adrenaline. Keenan called again. I let it go. My thumb hovered over voicemail. I didn't listen. Not yet. Unknown Portland number flashed across my screen and rang with authority. I answered. Mr. Yates, a woman said, voice cool and controlled. I'm Madison Cross, the coordinator. We need to talk. If you don't stop right now, I'm going to tell your son exactly what you did.
You have 10 seconds, Madison said, her voice leveled to cut through static. Call off your favors, and I'll tell the couple this was a pileup of bad luck. Or I walk into that ballroom and give them the truth. Either way, I get to keep my integrity. You're bluffing, I said. I've coordinated 200 weddings, she said. I know the difference between gremlins and a chessboard. Cora's hand squeezed my arm. Please stop, she mouthed. Paula endangered a guest. That's her license on the line if I decide to make calls. I don't want to. Stop this. I swallowed something hard. What do you want? For you to let me salvage anything I can, she said, softening. Those framed signs were cruel. I saw them at load-in. I told the bride and her mother it was going too far. They didn't care. I'm not defending them, but what you're doing won't fix what's broken. It'll just salt the earth. The line crackled under my silence. I hung up. Cora stared at me like I'd blown out a match and flung it onto dry grass. "She's not bluffing," she said. Before I could reply, the door to Reed's swung open. Madison herself walked in, headset looped at her neck, black suit, scuffed heels, someone who'd run a marathon indoors. She scanned once and found us in seconds. She sat without asking. "Mr. and Mrs. Yates, you're as composed as your reputation." "You do your research," I said carefully. "I listened to the caterers," she said, "and I saw those signs, framed, at 3 p.m. Negative energy, the bride called you. Her mother suggested metal detectors." I allowed myself a tiny, humorless smile. I talked her down. Cora's jaw tightened. "Metal detectors?" "Welcome to modern weddings," Madison said. "Look, I don't judge you for being angry, but you've turned a wound into a demolition. Let me propose something clean. No one gets physically hurt. No vendor loses their license. You want a hit they'll remember? Kill the cake. I'll push delivery to midnight. No cutting, no photo, no last sweet thing to redeem the night." I stared at her. She was right. The finale is what anchors memory. Cora surprised me. "Do it," she said. "They framed our faces." Madison dialed Russo's. "Tony, hey, it's Madison. Schedule change for the Meridian." "Yup, midnight." "No, full fee." She hung up, then collected her whiskey. "There, clean and surgical." "You think this keeps you clean?" I said. "I think I'm choosing my dignity. They forgot that our business runs on relationships, not just retainers." She stood. "Enjoy your evening," she said. "I have a wedding to pretend to rescue." 5 minutes later, Portland woke up to a new hashtag, one none of us could control. My phone lit up with a dozen pings at once. Faye again, breathless from London. "Dad, what did you do? Portland Twitter is on fire." "What hashtag?" I asked, already opening the app I barely used. "Hashtag Meridian Meltdown," she said. Videos of the slowed processional, the silent first dance, a table shot of lilies vanishing under Madison's command. Someone had posted the framed photos of us at the entrance, and the comments were savage, dystopian, cruel, unbelievable. "People are on your side," Faye said, "but this is bigger than you planned, right?" "Right," I said, stomach dropping. Once a story escapes, it belongs to the crowd. Then Madison texted, "Stage yours, he's taking the mic." Seconds later, my phone lit with an incoming call from Keenan. This time, I answered and said nothing. Through the line, I heard feedback, clinking, guests shushing. Keenan's voice came on, amplified and shaking. "Hi, everyone. Can I have your attention?" The room quieted, that heavy hush you can feel. "I know tonight's been a disaster. A lot of you saw the photos of the door. Those were my parents, Fletcher and Cora. I let those signs go up. I told myself it was boundaries. Really, I was weak. I let people I love get humiliated." Cora covered her mouth. The bartender stopped wiping a glass. "If you're laughing at our wedding online," Keenan said, "maybe we earned some of it. I hurt my parents. That's the real story." He set the mic down. The bar around me went still. My chest did something complicated, aching and proud at the same time. The bartender, kind for a stranger, asked, "That your son?" I nodded. "Sounds like he's trying to do the right thing," he said. My phone buzzed with a link. "Mother of the bride speaks her truth," the caption read. Yvonne, face flushed, had grabbed the mic. "Don't be fooled," they declared. "They're toxic. They tried to control everything. When we wouldn't obey, Fletcher threatened our wedding." It was a performance, and it was a lie. "We're going," I said, standing so fast my stool rocked. "Wait," Cora said. "Truth, not shouting." I dialed Faye. "I need social receipts," I told her. "Alia's old posts, money, vendors, anything that shows we offered help and they refused." Keyboard clatter. "Her profile's public," she said, incredulous.
PR 101 fail. Then, bingo. October. Keenan's parents offered to help with wedding costs again. So uncomfortable. January. Why do parents think money buys opinions? We said no to avoid drama. April. Kennan's dad flexing his vendor Rolodex. Eye roll. Screenshot bonanza. Send everything to Mike in catering and prep a burner to post publicly. Be careful. You raised me, she said. Careful is my hobby. We stepped into the Portland night. 4 blocks to the Meridian felt like miles. By the time we reached the ballroom, the screenshots were in the room. So was the moment our son would choose who he believed.
We slipped in through a side corridor. The ballroom loomed, centerpieces thinned, backup DJ testing cables, clusters of guests with their phones like lanterns. At the front, Yvonne hovered near the bandstand, righteous and rattled. Across the room, I spotted Keenan staring at a screen someone had handed him. The color drained from his face. Aaliyah walked up, reached for the phone. He pulled it back. Their voices lifted enough to carry. "This is your post," he said, showing her. "Old people drama, eye roll emoji, public, months of it." "I was venting," she said. "Everyone vents." "You vent to me," he said, "not to 200 friends." "And that one, we refused their money to set boundaries. You told a room tonight they didn't offer a dime." "It's complicated," she said. "It isn't," he said, voice cooling. "They offered, you declined, they suggested vendors, you mocked my dad for having a Rolodex. They were trying to help. You resented them for existing." Then he looked up and saw us at the back. His mouth formed Dad. I nodded once. The room seemed to tilt. Yvonne clocked the shift, spun, and jabbed a finger toward us. "There they are. Look at them," she said, voice pitched for the camera phones. "They came to gloat. They did this." Keenan stepped between us before I could speak. Slowly, he plucked the boutonniere from his lapel and set it on a nearby table, an old habit from childhood when he wanted a fresh start. "Mom," he said to Yvonne, "enough." "You sabotaged your wedding," she said. "We sabotaged my parents," he said, and the sentence hung there, truer than any I'd heard all night. Framed photos at the door, lies about money, posts mocking them for trying. And if you think I'm going to let you brand them toxic for your pride, no. Aaliyah grabbed his arm. "Let's talk privately." "Privately," he echoed. He looked at the silent dance floor, the watching eyes. "What wedding?" He turned for the exit. "If you walk out, don't come back," Aaliyah said, loud enough for the crowd. He paused, looked over his shoulder. "Okay." He walked toward us. Guests parted. Madison materialized at my elbow. "Security?" she whispered. I shook my head. "No." In the lobby, under a halo of fluorescent light, our son started to apologize and asked a question I didn't know how to answer.
Outside, under a street lamp, the city felt like it had turned the volume down. Keenan stood there, looking suddenly young, tuxedo hanging off his shoulders, boutonniere gone, eyes rimmed red. "I am so sorry," he said, voice fraying, "for the signs, for the silence, for choosing wrong." Cora reached him first and pulled him in. He shook in her arms in that way people do when the adrenaline finally leaves. We sat on a bench like 3 refugees from a reception, and he tried again. "I told myself banning you was boundaries. It was cowardice," he said. "I was afraid she'd leave if I stood up to her." "She might have," Cora said gently. "That should have told me something," he whispered. He looked at me. "Did you do it?" he asked. "All of it?" I stared at the concrete. "Would it change what happens next if I said yes?" I asked. He thought about that the way Keenan always had, turning the idea in his head like a coin. "I don't think so," he said, "because the posts were real. The signs were real. Tonight was just truth arriving loud." He rubbed his face. "And if you did it because I hurt you."
I found the part of my voice that still knew how to be a father. "I'm sorry," I said, "for the signs you saw, for the way we weren't there when you said vows, for the damage done tonight, both ways." He nodded. "Can I not go back in?" he asked. "Can I come home, just for tonight?" "Always," Cora said, the simplest promise we had left. On the drive, Keenan fell asleep in the back seat like he used to after Little League, mouth open, stress shucked off at last. My knuckles were white on the wheel. At a red light, Cora slid her hand over mine. "What have we done?" I whispered. She looked at our son in the mirror, then at me. "Held a boundary," she said. "And crossed one," she added, not letting me off the hook. I didn't argue. My phone hummed in my pocket with the world's commentary. I didn't look. The house was quiet when we unlocked it. I found a blanket for Keenan and left him on the couch. In the garage, 2 frames leaned against a wall, things I'd picked up the next morning from a sheepish hotel manager who just wanted them gone. The frames with our faces. Weeks later, the doorbell rang, and Keenan stood there thinner, ringless, and holding a different kind of apology in his hands.
Late August settled on the porch like warm dust. I was halfway through a coffee I didn't want when Keenan's car eased to the curb. He sat behind the wheel for a long minute, then climbed out, thinner around the temples. "Can I come in?" he asked, as if it were a privilege. "It's your home," I said. He took his old seat at the kitchen table without meaning to, hands flat, left ring finger pale under the tan. "Aaliyah and I are done," he said. The air left my lungs in a soft, involuntary sound. "I'm sorry," I said, and knew it was both true and too simple. He watched me to see if I meant it. "Are you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I didn't want your heart broken. I wanted your eyes open." He nodded slowly. "They are now." He told us about the hotel after the wedding, where the post-mortem turned into blame roulette. My family, her family, vendors, Mercury. "I said no to a do-over wedding with a $50,000 price tag," he said, a humorless laugh catching at his throat. "First real no she'd heard from me. She left 3 weeks later." Cora arrived mid-story, kissed his head, looked him over clinically. "You need sleep," she pronounced, "and soup." He looked at me again, unblinking. "You orchestrated it," he said. "The wedding." I let the silence say the rest. "It's okay," he added. My head came up. "Not right," he said. "Okay, I get it. They made you the villain at your own son's wedding. If someone did that to my kids—" He stopped, blinked. "If I ever have kids." The phone rang. Faye, beaming through audio. "Put me on speaker," she commanded. "I have news. The kind that makes this whole family stop arguing for 5 minutes. I'm pregnant." Cora cried like a kettle boiling. I laughed like a man who'd forgotten how. I said, "Come home, let us spoil you." After we hung up, I went to the garage and returned with the 2 framed photos. Keenan stared. "You kept 'em," he said. "They're proof," I said, "of what happened, of what we survived, of what we won't accept again." "You aren't hanging those," Cora said. "No," I said, "but I'm not throwing them away. Dignity isn't optional. Respect isn't negotiable. Those frames taught me that, and it cost all of us to learn." Keenan ran a finger along his own printed smile. "She took this picture," he said softly, 6 months in. I thought the future was set." He set the frame down, carefully, face to the wall. "Makes sense to keep the reminder." "Stay for dinner," Cora said, already reaching for onions. He started to protest. "You're not a guest," she said. "You're our son." That night, with soup simmering and the frames tucked away,
I had to face the only question I'd been avoiding. If I could go back, would I do it again?
Evening pooled in the corners of our kitchen, the way it always did at summer's end. Keenan and Cora were laughing about baby names that wouldn't make Faye roll her eyes. I watched them and felt the oddest mix: relief, regret, something like relief again. I slipped out to the porch with the frames under my arm and placed them on a shelf in the garage, face down. Not a trophy, not a shame, just a record. Back inside, Keenan lifted his mug of tea. "To starting over," he said. "To boundaries that don't turn into cruelty," Cora added. "To knowing the difference," I said. After dinner, we sat a while longer, the three of us talking small and big, jobs, leases, the awkward logistics of dividing a life back into two. Keenan kept touching the pale band on his finger like phantom jewelry. He asked about Faye's flight schedule and the crib Cora was already insisting on assembling twice for practice. He didn't once ask me for a confession. He already had what he needed. At some point, after the dishes but before the yawns, I stood at the kitchen doorway and stared at them. The two people I loved most, stunned and healing in my home. Would I do it again? The honest answer was complicated. The signs at the door were a line we couldn't ignore. The sabotage had drawn an uglier line through a night that should have belonged to our son. But it also tore the curtain. It revealed who would lie publicly and who would stand up in front of 100 people and tell the truth, even at his own expense. Consequences have a way of finding their mark. So does love, if you let it. I don't know what you'd call that in a ledger. Justice, spite, family math is messy. Later, when the house finally quieted, I walked back to the garage and ran my hand along the back of those frames. We didn't hang them. We didn't burn them. We learned from them. Maybe that's all you can ask for. Proof that you were hurt. Proof you had a spine. Proof you kept it. And proof you didn't let it turn your heart to stone. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Tap subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and drop a comment telling us where you're tuning in from and what you would have done in our place. Want more? In the next story, a catered gala turns into a locked room mystery when the power goes out and the only person who can fix it is the one everyone suspects.